Hello, sixth graders. Thank you for coming to watch this video today. On the last set of notes, we talked about Minnesota becoming a territory. So today we're gonna be talking about the next step after becoming a territory as a territory becomes a state. So a few things have to happen in order for that territory to become a state. The first one there, you can see the territory's population must have reached 60,000. And when we talked about it becoming a territory, it was at 5,000 free white males that have lived there for 2 years. This is different. It's just 60,000 people. So once you reach 60,000 people, you can work on becoming a state. So once you reach that, number one here, it says the territory petitions. And that word petition means ask. So it asks Congress, and Congress are the people that make laws for our country in Washington, D.C., for admission as a state. Congress must pass an enabling act allowing the people of the territory to form a state. So that word act means law. So they pass a law saying, yep, we think you're ready to go. You can work on becoming a state. So Congress did that on February 26, 1857. And then once they have that, two things need to be done. They need to fix its border. So, okay, what is your shape? What is going to be the shape of your state? What will it look like? And then you have to set the date for a territorial convention. Convention means meeting in which they would make their state constitution. The constitution is the plan of government. So it's basically saying, how will the state's government run? And then they set aside land for schools. Okay, so the first thing they have to do is set a convention to draw up a constitution. And as you can see here, the rules and laws of the new state government. So what happened, I'm not going to read through this whole thing. It's basically you have, just like we do now, we have Democrats and Republicans. And like back then, they don't always agree on everything, just like they don't always agree on everything now. Both parties wanted to create a constitution. So the Republicans came, they said, we have one. The Democrats came, they have one, and said they were in charge. Well, they each made their own. And so they didn't know which one to follow. So you have a Republican constitution, a Democratic constitution. So they decided, okay, we have to meet. So they said 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans come together, take the two, and make it into one. Well, they couldn't agree on anything. They couldn't agree on one document. So now Minnesota has 2 state constitutions. The Democratic one was submitted to Congress by mistake, but we actually use the Republican one in our state today as our constitution. And of course, this happened over 150 years ago. So there's been some changes to the Constitution since then. But they created, basically in a nutshell, they created a constitution that tells the state government how it would operate. So then you have to have people vote on the Constitution. So you have this document. The citizens in that area need to vote to approve it. And you also have to have elections to elect officers. So your governor and other places like that. So it was Alexander Ramsey versus Henry Sibley. After the election was done, Henry Sibley became the first state governor. So remember, Alexander Ramsey was the territorial governor, where now Henry Sibley became the first state governor. They also elected 2 U.S. senators, Henry Rice and James Shields. Remember, every state gets 2 senators. So they also elected representatives to serve in the House of Representatives. When it came to the Constitution, they voted in favor of it. So the Constitution was voted in by the people of Minnesota. So they had the state, was approved, they had a Constitution. So, and on March 11th, 1858, Congress approved Minnesota as the next state. Excuse me. And it was the 32nd state. So I do expect you to memorize that date. So May 11th, 1858 is when Minnesota officially became a state in the United States. And in Minnesota, as you can see right here, it's at the time there was a fight in Congress over Kansas being a free or slave state. So this is a time real close to the start of the Civil War where they would fight over the issue of slavery. And they did not want the number of slave states, so the states that allowed slavery, to be more than the number of free states. They wanted to try to keep them equal. So Kansas would end up joining as a slave state, while Minnesota would join as a free state, meaning slavery was not allowed in Minnesota. So the population in 1850, so right after it became a territory, was 6,077. And then in 1860 Right after it became a state, it was at 200,000. So it was a large increase in those 10 years. And this next part talks a lot about the land that the Dakota and Ojibwe gave up. So as more people are coming into Minnesota, the government decided to divide that land into acres. And squatters are people that could come in and buy the land and either resell it or use it. Could purchase up to 160 acres at $1.25 an acre. And they had to agree to improve the land. And that's quite a profit. If they bought it from the Ojibwe and Dakota roughly 3 cents an acre, the government turns and sells it for $1.22 an acre. Of course, that land nowadays is worth a lot more than that. But so that's what the government did. So when it became a territory to a state, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. There was disagreements over the Constitution. There was disagreements about what the shape of the state should be. The Democrats wanted one thing, the Republicans wanted another. That's just how politics go. Not everybody always agrees. And so they just had a lot of decisions to make. So here's what the territory looked like. It originally had 9 counties in it. That's what those different things are. So after a lot of going back and forth and changes and things like that, because here's another one that they wanted. So that's why I'm not going to read through these word for word. It's something you can do. But just know there was a lot of disagreement, and they just couldn't settle on one set boundary. But then eventually they did agree, and we have the shape of the state as it is today. So this one I'm just going to summarize too. At this whole time, St. Paul was the capital of the territory of Minnesota. But then they wanted to make St. Peter the capital. And so the legislature are people that make laws for an area, they voted to make St. Peter the capital of Minnesota. So they passed a law. And in order for so you can see here, down here it says bill. So before something is a law, it's called a bill. So they passed this bill. They approved it to make St. Peter the capital. In order for that bill to finally become a law, the governor has to sign it. Well, not everybody wanted St. Peter to be the capital. So Joe Roulette, one I had mentioned in the previous set of notes from the first page, didn't like that. So he took the bill and disappeared. So he ran with that bill before the governor could sign it. Well, they took a copy of the bill to the governor to sign, which he did. So then there was more arguments like, wait a second, that's not the original bill. That's a copy. He has to sign the real thing. So what ended up happening is they all thought because he signed a copy that St. Peter would become the capital. But a judge ruled that no, that the capital had been set. Capital had already been St. Paul. You can't change the capital no matter what happened. And he also said the governor needed to sign the original bill, not a copy. So St. Paul stayed as our capital, and St. Peter, you can see in this building here, they had built this to be the Capitol building where the government would work. Well, now they have used it as a courthouse. So that's just a little bit about how Minnesota became a territory onto a state and things like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. Have a good rest of your day. Take care. Bye.